Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Sean Courtney, and I am the Marketing and Communications Officer at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Our webinar today, Office 365 Implementation Considerations, will be presented by Matt Woolton, Senior Advisor at InfoExchange. If during the webinar you have a question, please type it in the question box and we'll answer them throughout the session. So that's all from me for now, so I'd now like to hand over to Matt.
Thanks, Sean, and welcome everyone to the webinar. Look, we're excited to be here today. We've got a lot to cover, so I will try and scoot through. I'm conscious that there is lots of different types of people here today from lots of different types of organisations. So I'm sure there'll be some of you who are quite technical IT people who are wanting to get into some of the detail around how to do a email migration, but I'm sure there's others who are, finance managers or admin people who are more interested in sort of how much it's going to cost or how we do that. So I'll try and cover a bit of everything, but today is really around if you're considering Office 365, what are some of the things you should be thinking about to make sure the transition is suitable for your organisation, and I'm sure some of you are also still in that decision-making phase where you're not quite sure whether it's right. So hopefully this session gives you a bit more information about that and helps you make that decision and to plan your implementation. So just a little bit of background about InfoExchange. So we're a not-for-profit organisation, and we work with hundreds of organisations across the country to provide a range of IT services, and one of those is helping organisations move to Office 365. So we work with a lot of different platforms, and all our clients have different types of IT setups. But one of the things that over the last 12 months in particular, since Microsoft have started offering Office 365 licenses free to eligible not-for-profits, we've started moving more and more people to Office 365 because it's just a really efficient and a platform that makes sense for the needs of most not-for-profits. So that's some of the clients that we've been working with, and as you can see there, they range in size from two-person organisations that just use Office 365 for email to large 1,000+ staff organisations that use Office 365 for everything from SharePoint to Skype for Business to email across a range of different countries and states. So yeah, it is a diverse platform that can be used by a wide sort of range of organisations. So the key things I was hoping to cover today is starting off obviously with what is Office 365. Now I'm hoping some of you have attended a session that I think Ryan from Connecting Up has presented, which is more a high level info sort of demo and information about Office 365 and some of the features and products of that, so that will obviously help as well. And that will allow me to go into a bit more detail about some of the benefits and really some of the implementation considerations. So we won't spend a lot of time sort of doing a demo today or speaking too much detail about the functions of things like SharePoint, but we will talk about things to consider when you're implementing each of those. And we will continue to have other webinars through Connecting Up. So there is a specific SharePoint webinar as well, which a colleague of mine, Stephanie, presents that may be suitable for some more detail on some of these applications. So after we've talked a bit about thinking about each of the applications like Exchange and SharePoint, we'll talk also about building the business case and some of the things that you can use to justify migrating to Office 365 to your management or to your board or to whoever you need to sort of sell this to. So moving on. essentially what Office 365 is, it's a cloud platform that allows Microsoft to host your infrastructure for you and provide you with services like Exchange for email, and SharePoint for documents, and Link, which is now Skype for Business, for video conferencing and instant messaging. And those are things that you used to have on a server. So 5 years ago, when I was an IT manager, I had an Exchange server, I had a SharePoint server, we had a Link server. Nowadays, you don't need to do that. You can just basically subscribe to a service and let Microsoft look after it behind the scenes. And they do have reliability and security, so they do give you an SLA of 99.9%, and they do give you strong security and certifications, which we'll touch on security and privacy again later. But one of the good things is it's always up to date. So you're not using Exchange 2010 that then you need to upgrade to Exchange 2013 that then you need to upgrade to Exchange 2016. It's just always the latest version that Microsoft are supporting. So it also provides you with Office apps and web apps. So that's Word Online, Excel Online, and it integrates with the desktop versions of Office, so Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. So again, we'll touch on that a bit further later. So at a high level, that is what Office 365 is. It's essentially Microsoft's platform for providing all types of organizations with IT services and infrastructure as a service as well as software as a service. So Office 365 is a dynamic product, as in it is changing all the time. So it's basically a suite of products and a suite of applications that you can pick and choose from. So on the screen there you can see the top three, mail, calendar, people. That's what you would recognize as what is traditionally on an Exchange server and what you would access through Outlook. So for some organizations, all they use for Office 365 is that, mail, calendar, contacts. And for some, that's fine. Others, they use a range of other systems like Yammer is a social media platform that both internally and externally you can use for collaboration and discussion. OneDrive for document storage. Sites there is SharePoint, which is essentially an intranet, and document management. You can see Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote online. Essentially what that is you can go into an internet cafe and log into your Office 365 account and start typing up a Word document regardless of whether you've got Word and Office installed on your desktop or laptop. So it gives you that flexibility and mobility to operate from anywhere. Office 365 also has some sort of add-on paid services that you can add on. So things like CRM, you notice there, this is my suite. Sorry about that, there's a bit of audio issue, but so basically, yeah, there's some add-on products like CRM, Power BI is another one that's for business intelligence that you can use for, you can essentially buy an additional service and it then becomes part of your suite of Office 365 products, which are all integrated into the one login and the one account. And this screen that you can see here, that's essentially my menu when you log into Office 365. There's a drop-down box and this is what appears. So these are all my applications. There's a couple there that you may not have heard of that are quite new. So Sway and Delve are two very new products. Video is reasonably new as well. That's Microsoft's attempt at YouTube type videos internally for Office 365. So at a high level, they're the things that come with Office 365, but Microsoft have a pretty advanced roadmap that will continue to grow and you'll continue to see more and more things added to this suite of applications. But just to reiterate, you don't need to use all of them, and you can pick and choose which ones you want for your organisation. So just in a bit more detail, what Microsoft is offering free, and that's always the best place to start, obviously, is what do you get for free? And the free product that Microsoft is offering is called the E1 plan. So essentially it's a pretty advanced plan that does come with most things, part of the Office 365. And essentially what you get is you get an email mailbox for as many mailboxes as you need for your organisation. So you can have 2,000 free mailboxes if you want. There is no limit to the number of users you can have in your organisation. And that applies to shared mailboxes, resources rooms, those sort of things. You can have as many of those as you want, regardless of how big your organisation is. And each of those mailboxes has 50 gig a user. Now, we work with a lot of different organisations, and we haven't seen anyone come close to filling a 50 gig mailbox. So let's just say it's plenty for you to store your information. And if you've got more than 50 gig, you know, there's probably something else going on, and it's probably a bit of a worry. Another product that comes with Office 365 is Skype for Business. It used to be called Link, and that's instant messaging, it's video conferencing, it's screen sharing, and for each of those we've got a slide later on that can go into a bit more detail, but that is something that you now get free as part of the E1 plan, which we're finding is a great bonus for a lot of organisations. You also get online storage. So again, you get a terabyte of storage. So that's a lot of storage that you can use in OneDrive to store your documents, images, for document management. Now that's 1 terabyte per user. So each one of your users gets their own, basically, it's a bit like Dropbox essentially, their own account with 1 terabyte of storage that they can use for document management. SharePoint also does document management, and you also get a storage allocation for that. Now you can also have collaboration tools and discussion across both SharePoint, and Yammer is a good collaboration tool as well, particularly for discussion and groups within your organisation. So again, we'll go into a little bit more detail later. Now what the E1 plan doesn't give you is a desktop version of Microsoft Office. So that's Outlook, Word, Excel to install on your PC. So typically what we recommend is that you still continue to buy those from Connecting Up. I believe the price at the moment is $57 for a version of Office 2013, which is the latest version. Actually 2016 came out this week, but I think the one on sale at Connecting Up is still 2013. Which we would typically recommend for another few months anyway. So typically that's what organisations do. You get the free Office 365 to host all your emails and all your documents, and then you buy the versions of Office from Connecting Up. So $57 will last you a couple of years until you need to upgrade again. However, some organisations choose to essentially upgrade to a paid plan. Now the paid plan that comes with basically everything is $6.38 per user per month that you can buy from Microsoft, and you get additional functionality. So where I was talking about those desktop versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, everything that you have on your PC, you can get that from Microsoft for $6.38 per user per month. Now the good thing about this is you can get that on up to 5 devices using Click to Run. So what that means is, and I'm using Office on 4 devices using this process. So basically on my Mac at home, I can just go to the Office 365 portal with my mwalton@infoexchange.org account, and I click Download Office for Mac 2016 on my home Mac, and it installs that version on my Mac. I do the same with my iPhone, I do the same with my iPad, and then I've also got my Windows PC at work, and any other, I can go and install it on my mum's computer if I wanted to work there for a couple of days, and then when I finish working on my mum's computer, I uninstall it and go and install it. So essentially you get 5 licenses that each user can install. So that's quite good for mobility and flexibility in the workplace. So some users are doing it for that purpose. They're buying the E3 plan. I talked about mobile apps. So the mobile apps that you get on iPads and Android and Windows, they're you can do editing for Word, Excel and PowerPoint. Now, to be honest, if I was a finance manager, I wouldn't be doing all my Excel sort of spreadsheeting and pivot tables and those sort of things on an iPad, but look, you can do most Excel functionality. Same with Word. I wouldn't be doing anything too advanced with formatting and mail merging and those sort of things, but you can get away with writing documents and then saving them up to the cloud. So the other reason some organisations move to an E3 plan is advanced email. So things like legal hold. So for example, if you had a staff member that deleted everything in their mailbox and cleared their deleted items, and you for some reason needed all that information, so for example we work with a couple of legal centres or a couple of organisations who for litigious purposes need to keep that information, an E3 plan actually keeps everyone's deleted items from their emails on an ongoing basis. So even if they delete them, Office 365 holds a copy of them. So that's one advantage for some organisations. And the eDiscovery Centre allows you to search all those emails. So it allows you to search through those mailboxes and across your SharePoint sites. So it's a bit like that old journaling function that can come in Exchange that allows you to find your information across the organisation a bit better. And business intelligence is an area where Microsoft are gradually getting better at, and Power BI is part of that, but that's an extra service. But business intelligence tools and dashboards and those sort of things are things that an E3 plan can give you the capacity to do. So that essentially is the E1 plan versus the E3 plan is a decision that you will need to make for your organisation if you're implementing Office 365, and obviously it has budgetary impact. So really it's about the maths of $6.38 a user a month versus $57 buying a version of Office from Connecting Up, and how that looks for your organisation and whether you need any of these other functions. So that's usually one of the first things that organisations need to decide before they move on. Keeping that in mind that you can mix and match. So we have some organisations where their managers who might need up to 5 devices of Office Pro are on E3 plans, but their casual staff and sort of everyday workers who work on a PC have a free E1 plan. So you can mix and match those licenses. All right, one of the questions that we always get is privacy and security. So this cloud thing, it's new for a lot of organisations, and it is something that has a little bit of a fear factor for some people because it's new and unknown. But essentially what it is, it's Microsoft have a data centre in Melbourne and a data centre in Sydney, and they've just got a heap of servers where they store your information. So basically they have pretty strict security controls over those servers, and they are now hosted in Australia. So previously some organisations had concerns over storing things in Singapore, which is where they previously were. And if you had created your Office 365 tenant a year ago, technically it is still in Singapore now. So Microsoft are in the process of moving all those old tenants across to their Melbourne and Sydney data centre. So we can't guarantee you when that is, but Microsoft have indicated that it is sort of by the end of the year, but it's in progress. So if you've got things in your contracts saying all your data must be stored in Australia, then Office 365 can assure you of that, whereas other platforms like Google Gmail is still stored overseas. So that's one advantage over some of the other platforms. Now, there is some peace of mind knowing that a lot of large organisations and governments are moving to Office 365. So Queensland Government and Queensland Police are on Office 365, and a lot of large not-for-profits that we work with, some of which were on that earlier slide, are on Office 365. Info Exchange are using Office 365. So when it comes to privacy and security, one of the things to consider though is what information are you storing on Office 365? So often a lot of organisations say, well, technically we don't store secure information on Office 365 because we don't email around things like client information or credit card details or anything like that. Our client information should be stored in a client management system. Our credit card details should be stored in a PCI compliant finance system or payment gateway. So that is a consideration of what are you actually storing in SharePoint or OneDrive or Exchange for your emails, and then you or your board or your management need to determine whether you're comfortable with that. Look, Microsoft have got a lot of resources online around their controls and things that they are doing to help safeguard your information, and there's some links on this slide. So I'll mention it again at the end, and I think Sean touched on it at the start, but you will get this slide deck, so you can have these links after the session, and you can go and do your own research on that. So the bottom point about owning and retaining the rights to your data is an important one. So if you move, let's say you migrate to Office 365 and then a year later you decide to move off and go to Gmail or go back to Exchange or whatever the decision is, you can migrate your data off and you can take all your information with you. So they don't lock you in and they don't take ownership over your data. So there is some level of comfort there around what you can do if you choose to leave. So whereas some other platforms, so I won't mention any names, do really make it hard for you to leave. All right. Now, actually, before I go into the next section of this discussion, I was going to go into a bit more detail about each of the applications, Exchange, SharePoint, Yammer, those sort of things. But before I did, I might just throw it open for questions. So I'll allow a few minutes for questions now. I'll also allow for some time at the end, but I'm conscious that already we've covered some ground around what's included in Office 365, E1 versus E3 licenses, privacy and security. So if there are any questions around those areas or anything else really, feel free to open that up now. So Sean, I might throw to you. Any questions from anyone?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions from Mike. Mike asks, where does Azure AD fit into the E1 and E3 plans and non-profit setups?
Yeah, so Azure AD, and we need to dig in about, Azure AD has multiple meanings, and there are a range of different products that fit under Azure AD. Basically, Azure AD is the authentication platform that Office 365 uses. So when you create an Office 365 account, so mwalton@infoexchange.org, you basically create an Azure AD account. So when I brought up that slide around the different applications, so CRM, for example, and anything else that Microsoft, any other platforms that Microsoft use, will use Azure AD. So that's why CRM, you can use your same username and password because it's Azure AD. Now, There are some other products that Microsoft are selling as a service. They're selling something called Azure AD Premium, which allows you to do password write back. You can also set up an Active Directory in Azure, which again adds a bit of complication, but if you're hosting your own servers in Azure, you can then have an Active Directory in Azure. So there might be some more complexity to that question, or to the answer to that question, which I'm happy to take offline or sort of follow up again directly. But essentially Azure AD is your login and password for Office 365.
Great, thanks for that, Matt. And the follow-up question from Mike is saying, we have about 30 users on a non-profit license set up with Microsoft. We are definitely labelled as a non-profit, but they put us as on an E2 plan and not an E1. Are you able to explain why this may be?
Yeah, the E2 plans and the E1 plans are basically the equivalent. So I wouldn't worry. The E2 plan is actually free as well. So to be honest, it doesn't make any difference. So as long as you're getting the free E2 plan, then that's the most important bit. So really the process, and we'll touch on it again at the end, but the process for getting the free trial, there is a non-for-profits page that you go to and you register for an E3 trial. It's a little bit confusing, but then you go through an eligibility process that Microsoft check whether you're an eligible not-for-profit, and if you are, then they basically assign you the free E2 or E1 licenses, and then you can start using them for free. So there's a few steps in that we probably don't have time to go into today, but there is a link on the final slide, again, which I'll send you. There's a link for how you can click on that link after today's session. If you want to go and set up a trial, feel free, go and log into the non-for-profits page and set up a trial and start using it. So I suppose going back to the answer for Mike is, as long as your E2 plan is free, then I wouldn't worry about it. E2 and E1, they're basically the equivalent, and it's just one of those idiosyncratic things that Microsoft are doing in the back end that don't really have an impact.
Thanks, Matt. Next question is from Jeff, who asks, how does the desktop version and the cloud version of Office products know how to talk to each other?
Yeah, so the cloud, when you're talking about the cloud version, it's the web application. So you just access Word through a web browser. So if that's the case, you don't actually, it doesn't need to talk to your local version. But if you have a local version of Word, essentially when you go to open a document in SharePoint, for example, or OneDrive, you say, do I want to open this in Word or do I want to open this in Word Online? So you choose which one you want to use. And then when you're on your Word document and you're editing it on your desktop, basically every time you click save, it saves it back up to SharePoint or OneDrive or wherever that lives. So your version of Word always knows where your Word is stored. So when you click save, you're essentially either saving it to your desktop or your local PC, or you're saving it to SharePoint and OneDrive. So if you save it to SharePoint and OneDrive, whenever you save it, it will always save it back to SharePoint and OneDrive.
Great, thanks, Matt. Jarrell asks, I heard there's an Office 365 for not-for-profits. What's in it for not-for-profit organisations?
So is that question what's in the plan? And I suppose the answer to that is all the slides that I've previously gone around E1. That's what you get. So I can just flick back if you like. So this is the Office 365 for not-for-profits is the E1 plan, and that's what you get. Now, technically, if I was a corporate organisation and I bought an E1 plan, it's exactly the same as what a not-for-profit gets, but the corporates need to pay, I think the latest price is maybe $15 a user a month for an E1 plan. But the not-for-profits are getting exactly the same product for free. So it's not a different product, it's a different licensing model, meaning it's for free.
Cool, thanks
Hope
for
that
that.
answered that question.
No, that was good. Thanks for that clarification, Matt. Our next question is from Brett, who asks, is VDSL fast enough to operate Office 365?
Yeah, I've actually got some appendices which will be in the slide when I send. That's a bit of a loaded question. There's not a one answer to that. Basically, it depends what you're using Office 365 for. So if you're just using email, basically the network traffic is probably going to be the same as what you're doing now. So if you're using Gmail or Exchange locally and you're sending out emails, and then you move to Office 365 and just send out emails, then essentially it's the same. And what we find is for organisations that are, you know, let's say under 30 users, ADSL is fine. If you're using things like link video conferencing and you've got 5 people on the video conference at once and you're syncing large documents and images with OneDrive, then you're going to use up a lot of bandwidth and that might not be suitable. So often we do recommend that organisations upgrade their internet connections to what we call a synchronous connection, where you might have 20 meg download speed, but you also have 20 meg upload speed. Whereas if you've got an ADSL connection, you've only got sort of 1 megabyte per second upload speed. So there isn't one answer to that, and I'm happy again to talk offline about the specific organisations. But essentially, it's doing a speed test and assessing that for each organisation. So sorry if that was a bit vague, but it's not a black and white answer to that one.
Thanks, Matt. Do we have time for one more question, or would you like to move on?
One more, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So we've got a question from Mike, and he says, having played fairly extensively with both Office 365 and Google Apps, and presently running a mainly Google Apps setup, we are increasingly drawn to the Office 365 one and plan to switch it. However, we still find Gmail to be a far superior mail app. Is there a realistically workable and integrated way to use Gmail as the mail app, but Office 365 for anything else?
Yes. So you can configure your Outlook, for example, to IMAP and use Gmail for that in your Outlook. And then you can just set up, if SharePoint is the key thing that you want, you can just use SharePoint. The issue with that is you're going to have a separate username and password for Gmail than you will for Office 365. So it's not as integrated solution. The one thing that I would sort of question about that from the mail functionality, we do find that a lot of organisations actually prefer the mail and calendaring, sharing, and that functionality of Office 365 over Gmail. But typically most organisations use Outlook anyway. So when you're doing your day-to-day work in mail and calendars and contacts, you're actually sitting in Outlook. The alternative is you can use the web application for Outlook Web Access, which is probably more similar to the Google sort of when you log into gmail.com. So the screenshot on the top left of this slide is an image of your Outlook web app. So if you just logged on to Office 365 online from an internet cafe or any PC, you can get a nice looking sort of interface, but yes, at the end of the day, if you really want to use Gmail for mail and have a SharePoint environment, you can do that. So I suppose, Sean, was that all the questions for now? And I'll try and allow some time at the end for questions anyway.
Yeah, look, that's all the questions from now. We did just have a quick comment from Mike just in regards to that. He was saying that Office 365 seems to block IMAP from Gmail, and IMAP only seems to work for desktop Outlook. Did you know anything about that?
No, I don't believe it blocks anything. And look, it sounds like I can have a chat to Mike offline as well, but you can definitely use Gmail on Outlook using IMAP, and that's what Gmail's designed to use is the IMAP platform.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Question.
So I think we're good to continue.
Great. Okay, so the next bit I just wanted to quickly cover off a little bit more detail about each of the key applications. Now, we won't have time today to go through all of them. As I said, there's a big suite now, but just the first few are ones where we typically find organisations get the most value out of moving to Office 365 for Exchange. So some organisations, the whole reason they go to Office 365 is to get rid of their local Exchange server or stop paying for a hosted Exchange or hosted email service. And if you're using Outlook, really, a lot of people don't even notice the difference. So, so the bottom right slide there, that's Outlook, that's calendar sharing, booking meeting rooms, those sort of things. The calendar functionality in Office 365 is quite good and integrates well with Outlook. Obviously, contacts is the middle one there. The functionality is quite good as well around contacts. You can do distribution lists, those type of things that are both shared and personal. So if you're thinking of moving to Exchange, really the important thing is what is your current infrastructure? And going back to, I think it was Mike's question or someone's question, is can your internet handle it? So yeah, as I said, some people can operate on ADSL fine, others might need to upgrade to an Ethernet or a fibre connection. Hardware. Does your hardware meet the minimum specs that Microsoft recommend? Again, there's an appendices on this slide deck around what are your minimum specifications. So things like, do you have Internet Explorer 11 to access SharePoint? Do you have 4 gig of RAM? Do you have Windows 7? Those sort of things. So software, we always recommend only supported versions of Windows, so not XP or Vista. Windows 7, 8's probably the recommended version at the moment. 10's obviously the new version that is still quite new. So often a lot of our clients are waiting a few months for 10, but the main thing about software also is Office 2013 is, and as I said, Office 2016 came out this week, but again, it's quite early days for that. If you're using Outlook for your email and you're using OneDrive and syncing and you're using SharePoint, we strongly recommend upgrading to the latest version of Office, so Office 2013 at this stage. So that's the first step, is working out what you've got and working out how difficult it's going to be to upgrade everything. And that really comes into defining the scope of the project and building your business case to say, well, it's going to be really easy because we're all on Office 2013 and all our PCs are fine. All we need to do is reconfigure Outlook, as opposed to, oh, we're all on XP and we're all on Office 2007. It's going to be a bit of a project to upgrade everything. The other thing is reviewing your current users. So how many mailboxes do you have? So this could be you log into your Exchange server and get a report, or get a list from your provider, and working out what mailboxes, resources you have. So part of the discussion that we usually go through with our organisations that we work with is how best to set up things like shared mailboxes, shared resources in Office 365, because often the way they've got it set up now isn't best practice. So things like if you've got a admin@infoexchange.org email address, you actually set that up as a shared mailbox and then give permissions to users to access it. The other thing of current users is being conscious now that you get free licenses and you can give as many mailboxes as you want. So a lot of organisations use this as an opportunity to say, well, let's give all our board, all our volunteers, all our casuals, let's give them all an email account. That's fine. It doesn't cost us anything, and it just sort of brings the organisation together. So that's part of the process of implementing Exchange. And then really it's about resourcing. So both the technical and non-technical. So often we work with IT managers and they've got the technical and yeah, we'll upgrade to Office 2013 and we'll configure this on the server and that's fine. But often they forget about, okay, well let's tell the users what to expect and let's do a bit of change management around, okay, Office 2013 looks a little bit different than Office 2007, or hey, look at these new functions in SharePoint, or this is how you use Link. So those sort of non-technical things are important as well as the technical components of changing DNS and upgrading to Office, those sort of things. So one of the key questions that we always ask is, does your IT contractor have the expertise? So if you've got a support provider that has the expertise, then they're usually the first person you ask about this. But if they don't, then you might have to sort of go to market to find someone to help you to migrate. Or can your staff do it? Is it something that your IT manager wants to learn to do as a once-off sort of migration project? But resourcing it is important. And yeah, considering the change management and communications. So if you're going to ask users to configure their own Outlooks or update their mobile phones after you change the email from Gmail to Office 365, then you probably need some work instructions or a little bit of training on how to use SharePoint and those sort of things. But also asking your key stakeholders, what do you want to use SharePoint for? Do you want to use Yammer? Is Skype for Business for us, or have we already got a good video conferencing solution? So that non-technical component is critical, we've found. So these are the, when you're planning your email migration, there are a lot of factors. So I'll just bring all of these up at once. So these are the things that we consider when we're working out, one, how difficult or how easy a migration is going to be, and what's involved and what approach we take. So things like, are you an organisation with 2 mailboxes, or are you an organisation with 1,000? Obviously, that makes a big impact. And where is the mail coming from? So Mike was asking before about, okay, our mail's coming from Google, so we're going to use an IMAP process to migrate the mail from Google over to Office 365, or we've got an Exchange server that all our mail is stored on the Exchange server under our desk. So those type of things are the things to think about. And user provisioning, things like, do we need directory synchronization, which means one username and password for all our applications? Or is it okay that users have one username and password for their local PC and then a different username and password for Office 365 and maybe a different username and password for their client management system? So there are lots of different levels of complexity based on the size of your organisation. And this next slide gives some examples of different migration types. Now, this may be, sorry, too much detail for some of you, so I apologise for that, but for others, these are typically the 5 types of migrations that Microsoft endorse for moving your mail, calendars and contacts from wherever it is now over to Office 365. So, for example, if you've only got 5 users and you've got POP accounts where you store your PST file on your local computers. Then the most efficient way to do that is a really manual process of exporting and importing PST files, and so importing them up to Office 365, and that's as simple as it can get. Going down to the hybrid deployment, a lot of at the moment for several large organizations, where we set up basically a technical environment that has your local Exchange server sitting next to Office 365 and connected and talking to each other over a 6-month period. And it gradually allows you to migrate groups of 6 staff at a time, for example, over several months. So we're doing some, for one organization, we're doing a pilot group on Thursday where we're moving the first 6 users across, and then we'll do probably 10 users a week for the next 6 months. Again, gradually testing, making sure that each user is happy, and that it allows us to have IT people on site when those 10 users are migrating across. So depending on what you've got now is depending on what migration type you would use. Now, obviously for things like hybrids, that's probably where you need to engage a specialist in Office 365 and Exchange. Whereas for some of you, the Outlook migrations where you're just exporting and importing PST files, that could be something you do yourself. So that's the scale and scope really depends on those factors from the last slide. So look, I'm sure there's lots of questions about each one of these, and to be honest, we have do-it-yourself workshops that have 3 weeks of webinars on cutover migrations, for example. So that can get more detailed and complex, but again, you'll have these slides, so you can use this to say, oh, look, based on this table, I think I fit into cutover Exchange because I've got an Exchange server and I'm between 30 and 100. So when I go and talk to my IT organization, I can say, do you know how to do a cutover migration, for example? And if they say, what's a cutover migration, then you know they're probably not the organization to help you with it. So I might move on from email, but yeah, look, each of these really requires a bit more detail if you're actually going to do some of those more complex migrations. The next one that is sort of one of the most popular aspects to Office 365 is SharePoint Online. So again, this used to be a product that you have on a server, and it can be used for a wide range of things. So even those 3 slides, totally different functions for totally different organizations. So we have one, the top one is a very basic company intranet that comes out of the box essentially when you get Office 365. You get a really basic intranet that's empty that you can then start putting documents in if you want, or news and announcements, those type of things. The next one that Kids Undercover there, we used it for them and other organizations for project management. So task lists, communication, storing documents about a project, and really collaboration. The one down the bottom, the HR portal, that's things like forms and internal processes. I've done timesheets on SharePoint, incident reporting, those sort of things. Whereas other organizations just use it for documents. Just sort of pretend it's a bit of a file share like your server, and you can use it for that purpose. So really, the first thing to think about is what are you using SharePoint for and OneDrive. So this slide, there's a lot of confusion between the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint. So in short, because we're running out of time, OneDrive is something that we traditionally use for individuals to store their personal working documents, and it's owned for the user. When that user leaves the organization, essentially you lose or can archive those documents. SharePoint is more a collaboration platform and an intranet where all the individuals from the organization can store information centrally. So when I store my documents on SharePoint, and then if I leave Info Exchange ever, all my colleagues can continue to access all my documents that I've stored on SharePoint. Now, both of those can be taken offline. So when I pick up my laptop and go and want to do work on a plane, I have an offline version, which when I plug back into the internet, when I land or get to my office in Sydney, that synchronizes back up to SharePoint and or OneDrive. So things to think about is, as I was saying, what are you going to use it for? And this is different for each organisation. And what are your current systems and information architecture? So have a look at your current folder structure and go, is that still suitable for us, or does that really need a tidy up? And 90% of the organisations we work with, their folder structures are a mess, so they use it as an opportunity to tidy up. Assigning people to lead the project, both non-technical and technical, and really consider the implications of a lot of people are used to just storing things on their desktop and being able to do their own thing, but now you're asking people to store things in a central environment. So just, again, keeping in mind that change management. So as I said, SharePoint's quite a complex thing, or it can be quite simple, but we have another webinar and do-it-yourself workshops that we're running next week on SharePoint. So if you're interested in that, get in contact or register for our do-it-yourself workshops next week. Skype for Business, again, instant messaging, point of presence. We find it's really reasonably easy to implement and something that usually adds a lot of value and brings organisations together. So look, I won't go in too much detail today about that, but we find that even if you just use it for instant messaging and point of presence, which is knowing where people are and whether they're in meetings, so you can see the green and red and yellow there to know whether I'm away from my desk or in a meeting, that is based on my Outlook calendar. So even that just adds value, let alone the whole video conferencing and saving travel time and those sort of things. Yammer is another one that I've been, some organisations are just doing Yammer first because it's, again, reasonably easy to do, and it's like the Facebook for business essentially. So what we're seeing is it's a really good collaboration platform for more casual discussion. So it's not an intranet and it's not a formal document sharing or, platform, but just for discussion and news and those sort of things, CEO blogs, and Yammer we're finding is quite beneficial. Mobility is another thing you consider with Office 365. So there is apps that you can get and you can install them on up to 5 devices if you have the E3 license. And mobile device management has been recently released by Microsoft to allow you to do things like remote wipe and remote lock of mobile phones and those sort of things. So if that's something you're interested in, have a look at mobile device management. And Intune is a product that, an add-on that Microsoft is selling, $770 per user per month, that can do that in a bit more detail. So essentially manage your devices for you. Look, we've touched on some of these points, and sorry if I'm skipping through, we're just conscious of time. Really, when you're building the business case for Office 365 and you're trying to sell this to your CEO or board, I think it's just picking things that are going to appease their priorities. So often for management, you can just say, look, video conferencing is going to save us $5 grand a year in travel costs for you not having to travel to 5 different locations. So with that $5 grand, we can implement Office 365 instead of you driving around the state or the country. Alternatively, if you're talking to the IT team, you might, well, now you don't need to upgrade every month. You don't need to do server maintenance. You don't need to buy new licenses. Those sort of things can help justify it from both a financial and a maintenance point of view, and that will allow your IT team to focus on more important things. Single source of truth is an important one. So, for example, a lot of the organisations we work with, let's say privacy policy. you might have privacy policies stored in about 6 different locations across your organisation. It might be in this folder on your shared drive, it might be on the CEO's desktop, it might be on your intranet, it might be in a different folder, a risk management folder. But having it stored on SharePoint, you basically store it in one spot and all the people access it in that one spot and edit it if you want it editable. So they're just a few of the things that you can think about when you're talking about the business case. Look, I'll skim through these really quickly. These are just 10 tips when you're thinking about implementing Office 365, some of the things to think about. As I've mentioned, staging. So really just picking the things that are going to add value to your organisation. So if your Exchange server is about to die or you need to upgrade your licenses, just move to email and then worry about SharePoint later if it's too difficult. Number 2, explaining the benefits and engaging those local champions. And with any change requires a bit of engagement and change management. As we were talking about with one of the questions, making sure your internet and your version of Office is up to date, and consider upgrading if you need to. Look, some Office 365 things you can do yourself, but depending on how large you are and how risk averse you are, then I would consider using someone with Office 365 experience for the transition. Things like reviewing your security controls. So there's no point moving to a really complex password in Office 365 if you've got post-it notes with your passwords sitting on your monitors. So reviewing those types of things, it's often a good opportunity when you're changing systems. Local storage if you want large videos, files. So look, it is an online platform, so if you are synchronizing large videos, it's going to use up your bandwidth. So maybe you need a local drive or a local server for that purpose. Active Directory. So again, that might be something that you keep a server on site for. So Active Directory, that's where your users and passwords live. So you can set up synchronization to have that single sign-on if you want. Collaboration for both board and volunteers and your staff using SharePoint or Yammer. All right, so I've mentioned a few of these throughout the process, but essentially next steps for you. Readiness assessments are something we're offering through Connecting Up that you can buy on the Connecting Up site, where you get an expert like myself or other people within our organisation that can provide you with some advice. So essentially that's a $100 product where we give you work you through a process and give you a detailed report on Office 365 and how it works for your organisation and what our recommendations are. Things like, is your internet connection suitable? What type of migration approach should you use? Those sort of things. I've mentioned DIY workshops. Again, feel free to register for those. Implementation services. So again, this webinar is not about a sales pitch, but Info Exchange do offer implementation services and advice, and that ranges in price and depending on your organisation. And we even do some where we use volunteers that make it very low cost for organisations, for small organisations. So if you're a small organisation, we might be able to get you on Office 365 really, really cheaply and easily. So larger ones, obviously, it's a fee for service that we can quote. I might throw open to questions, but my email address and phone number are there. Feel free to call me anytime if you want to discuss your specific scenario in a bit more detail. So Sean, I've just scraped in at 12, I think, so I'm happy to hang out for those who want to stay on the line for questions. Yeah, happy to take questions.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we've just got a couple of questions, more from the earlier slides. For example, Jarrell asks, for the E1 plan, which is online based, does it mean that you won't be able to access Office docs?
I'd need to clarify what you mean by Office docs. The web portal, so if you're using Word Online, you would need to have those documents stored on an online platform like OneDrive or SharePoint. So yes, if you have a server in your office, that isn't connected to Office 365, you won't be able to use Word Online. But if you had Word on your desktop, then obviously you could. So hopefully that is what he meant by Office Docs.
No worries, thanks for that, Matt. And a follow-up question from Jarell. For Exchange Online, there's no limit in the number of users, and just wanted to clarify as regards to the size of the mailboxes.
50 gig per user. Yep. So just an example of size. So I consider myself a pretty heavy email user, and I think my mailbox at the moment is 2 gig. So, and I don't think mine will ever get any bigger than 2 gig. So 50 gig is plenty.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. And we've got a question from Mike. Let me know if you need me to repeat this one. So he says, in the Admin Center dashboard, and then go to Service Overview, then Service Health, and then in the Current Health section, we have seen ongoing issues for 3 to 6 weeks of it saying Service Degraded for Exchange and in Extended Recovery for Identity Service. It means our Skype for Business isn't working properly, and as well as a few other things. Is this a common issue for an E1 365 setup?
No, it doesn't sound like a common issue. One of the things that Microsoft do through your admin portal is you can get support directly through Microsoft. So you don't need to, if you've got some IT expertise, you can basically log a support ticket or ask questions. That service health area that Mike's referring to is somewhere you can go to look if you are having issues. If your Skype for Business isn't working, it doesn't sound like it's related to an Exchange Online identity service health. So for example, if Microsoft are doing, I believe they were doing some maintenance or doing some upgrades on their hybrid migration process, that might, for an overnight period, degrade the service health a little bit. You can still get emails throughout this whole process. They do have a 99.9% SLA. So yeah, I don't expect that would affect your Skype for Business. So that could be worth logging a Microsoft ticket. Otherwise, I'm happy to speak to Mike offline about that.
No worries, thanks, Matt. I think that seems to be the halt on all the questions for now. We haven't had any more coming through, so I can hand it back over to you.
Yeah, look, and look, I'm obviously happy to keep going, but I'm conscious that we have gone past the 12 o'clock, and I don't want to hold people up, but yeah, look, I think really the next step is deciding where you need help and what you can do yourself, and to do that you might need to educate yourself a little bit more, and there are some yeah, support available there. There's some resources on this slide here where you can get more information. So again, everyone will get this slide deck, but essentially that first point there is where you can go to register for your free trial. So if you're ready, now if you're not ready and you're not planning on doing it for 12 months, I probably wouldn't recommend doing a free trial now, because that might expire, then you'll be stuck with that one. But if you're ready to move, that's where you go for information. And then there's some other information there about the E1 versus the E3, a bit more of a technical detail about those plans. Down the bottom is more of that trust center around privacy and security, and yeah, some links to privacy principles. Look, Microsoft do provide some good online resources, so you could do some training by yourself. It's one of those things that you need to make a call reasonably early on. Is it something that is going to add value for you or someone in your organisation to learn how to do a migration, something that you may or may not ever do again? or is it something you just outsource? So look, we work with organisations in both scenarios. So happy to help you, upskill your staff with do-it-yourself workshops and those type of things and readiness assessments. Or for those who just don't want to think about it and just want someone to help them do it in a risk-free environment, Info Exchange can help as well. So and just sort of have someone look after it for you. But look, I would say if you've got a local guy that has a good idea of your organisation, so yeah, speak to them about how much they're across. All right. Look, there's plenty of appendices here as well about minimum specs for your office, what happens when the internet goes down. Here's the internet bandwidth slide that I was referring to before around what scenarios might be suitable, an ADSL suitable connection. So this might give an example. If you're a 10-person organisation and you're using Link a lot, you might want to upgrade, but if you're 10-person and you're just using email, then that's fine. Yeah, so there's minimum specs for hardware. So 4 gig memory, dual core, 32-bit i3 is the processor for a good PC that will run Office 2013 and Office 365. So, all right. Well, look again. Open to questions, but feel free to email me or call me directly after this if anyone else has any other questions. And Sean will send out the slides.
Great, thanks Matt, and thank you everyone for participating today. As stated, we'll send an email containing a link to a video and copy of the slides from the presentation, so please keep a lookout in your inboxes. And if you have any further questions, you can send them through to mwalton@infoexchange.org, or feel free to send them through to events@connectingup.org. And as always, don't forget to check our website, newsletters, Facebook and Twitter for more information on upcoming events. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Thanks everyone. Good luck.